Your emotions never stay still. Either you learn to control them or they end up controlling you. Sometimes all it takes is a little thing to throw you off balance. Someone cuts you off, makes a nasty comment, and that's it. It starts to build inside you until it ruins your day. The problem is the world seems full of triggers, and each one touches a sensitive spot within you. But understand, this isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of fatigue. So it's the weight of excess. Too much noise, too many demands, too much pressure. We live in a time when any small stimulus turns into an explosion, but there's a difference between what the world causes you and what you choose to feel. That's where true power is born, emotional control. Marcus Aurelius said, "It's not what happens that hurts us, but our judgment about it." When you change the way you see things, you also change the force with which they hit you. Now imagine the same day, the same problems, but with a different you. You don't react impulsively, you respond calmly. You don't lose yourself, you observe. You stop being controlled by triggers and become the steady point in the midst of chaos. This video is an exercise for your mind. Here you'll learn how to transform anxiety into clarity, impulse into balance, and emotion into strength. If this resonates with you, write in the comments, "Today I take control." Because that's what truly changes everything. Not the world out there, but how you choose to face it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's go straight to the first lesson. Today, you stop being a prisoner of your thoughts and start commanding your own mind. Number 1, you were not born to live in chains. Prison doesn't just appear in visible chains, it hides within those who can't say no to themselves. Seneca said, "Everyone is a slave to something, money, pleasure, fame, or the opinion of others." And he was right. Modern slavery is invisible and resides in the mind. Some are prisoners of vices, others of haste, others of the constant desire to be approved. They may appear free, but they live in obedience to what controls them. Freedom begins when you ask a simple question: who's in charge, me or my impulse? Physicist Richard Feynman realized this one day when he felt a strong urge to drink. He wasn't an alcoholic, but the urge bothered him because he realized it came from a place he couldn't control. And then he understood. If he couldn't resist something small, he could be a slave to anything. The same happened with General Dwight Eisenhower. For 40 years, he smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day until a doctor said, "It's killing you." Eisenhower replied, "So I gave myself an order to stop," and never lit another cigarette. This quote demonstrates what self-discipline is, giving yourself an order and following it. Epictetus, who was literally born a slave, said that many free men lived imprisoned, not by chains, but by their desires and habits. Even in chains, he was free inside, because he understood that freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, but avoiding what destroys you. This is where Stoicism ceases to be theory and becomes practice. Everyone has something that controls them: food, cell phones, comparisons, fear, immediate pleasure. But what defines a strong person is the ability to choose consciously, not impulsively. When you feel like giving up, eating unhealthy foods, reacting angrily, or becoming distracted from your focus, ask yourself, who's in charge now? If it's instinct, you're a slave. If it's reason, you're free. Discipline is the highest form of freedom because it allows you to act purposefully, not out of dependence. It's not about stifling desires, but about not being dominated by them. Ultimately, this is the question that separates the ordinary from the great. Do you control your mind, or does it control you? Number 2, the secret to living without being swallowed by emotions. Many people think that being stoic means feeling nothing, but it's quite the opposite. The Stoics didn't want to erase emotions, but rather purify them. They wanted to feel consciously, without being driven by blind impulses. They weren't cold. They simply learned to exchange excess for the essential. Less anger, more understanding; less fear, more clarity; less pride, more humility; less ego, more love. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The secret of life is to be free from passions, but full of love. Love for the present, for people, and for destiny." Stoicism is not about suppressing what you feel, but about learning to feel wisely. There is a big difference between feeling everything and being carried away by everything you feel. Marcus Aurelius wept when he lost a beloved teacher. Epictetus spoke of compassion. Seneca wrote of kindness. They felt deeply, but knew how to remain whole within the pain. They understood that suffering is part of life, but despair is a choice. The purpose was not to become cold, but to become aware. The Stoic is not made of stone. He is firm as a mountain that feels the wind blowing but does not lose its balance. James Baldwin said, "Hate always destroys the hater first." This truth is also Stoic. Negative emotions don't just hurt the world, they begin by destroying those who harbor them. Over time, the true test is this: are you becoming more bitter or more understanding, more distant or more human? True growth isn't about hardening, it's about expanding your heart without getting lost in the chaos. The Stoics spoke of circles of care, an image created by Heracles. At the center is you, what you think, feel, and do. Around you are others, your family, friends, city, all of humanity, and ultimately, nature. To be wise is to widen this circle, bringing what is distant closer to your heart, until you understand that everything that happens to others also touches you. Being Stoic is not isolating yourself from the world. It is acting within it with awareness. It is feeling without drowning, helping without being extinguished, loving without being trapped. It is caring for the world without forgetting yourself, and caring for yourself without taking your eyes off the world. In the end, true Stoicism isn't about feeling less, it's about feeling better. It's about living with an awake heart and a calm mind. It's about acting with both firmness and kindness, because true strength isn't in not feeling, but in choosing how to feel. When the mind is calm, love returns to occupy the space left empty by fear. Number 3. Expectations are traps in disguise. Much of human suffering arises not from what happens, but from what you expected to happen. Expectations are silent traps. They promise security but deliver frustration. You create mental images of how people should act, how life should flow, how the future should unfold. And when reality doesn't follow the script you wrote, you feel betrayed. But life never signed that contract. Every disappointment is at its core an unfulfilled expectation. Expectations are seductive because they seem innocent. Expecting recognition, reciprocity, all of this seems natural. But without realizing it, you begin to condition your peace on outcomes you can't control. And when those outcomes don't come, your mind reacts with anger, sadness, or guilt. The problem isn't wanting the best. It's demanding that the world behave according to your predictions. Reality is like the wind, unpredictable, alive and constantly changing. And those who try to force it to always blow in the same direction end up exhausted. The Stoics called this premeditation of evil, the practice of imagining that things might go wrong to lessen the shock when they do. It's not pessimism, it's preparedness. It's the wisdom of those who understand that life is not a straight line, but a field of forces in motion. Seneca said, "The man who prepares for difficulties overcomes them before they arrive." What destroys us is not our clothes, but our surprise at them. We expect the sea to always be calm, and we forget that the sea by nature has waves. Expectations also distort relationships. You create characters in your head and then suffer when people don't live up to the role you imagined. You expect them to understand how you feel, to act as you would, to offer the same as you. But each person lives within their own internal universe, full of pain, stories, and limitations. Demanding that others understand you as you understand yourself is expecting them to see the world through your eyes. This isn't love, it's control, disguised as affection. Emotional maturity begins when you stop demanding perfection from others, a perfection that you yourself don't even possess. When expectations fall, reality can finally be seen for what it is, imperfect, but true. And it is in this truth that peace resides. Acceptance doesn't mean conforming, but seeing things without the lens of fantasy. Acceptance liberates because it dissolves the illusion that everything has to go your way to succeed. Life isn't a series of successes, it's a conversation between trial and error. Sometimes what seems like a loss is simply a redirection. Marcus Aurelius said that serenity comes from adjusting one's desires to what life offers, not from forcing life to adjust to one's desires. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom. Those who adapt suffer less. Those who persist suffer forever. It is attachment to expectations that makes you resist change, and it is resistance that multiplies pain. Life is movement. It doesn't obey wills, it follows laws. And when you move with it, everything flows. Try to look at what frustrates you honestly. How many of your pains stemmed from the difference between what you wanted and what actually happened? How many times have you called injustice something that was simply reality? The mind creates an illusion of control, and every time the world deviates from its script, it despairs. But when you abandon the script and begin to act with presence, something changes. What comes is received with clarity. What doesn't come is accepted with dignity. Expectations keep you trapped in how it should be, and Stoicism calls you back to how it is. Between these 2 points lies freedom. Don't expect less from life. Expect less from your predictions. Live open to the unexpected. Do your best, but accept that the outcome belongs to the universe, not your control. The calm of someone who lives without expectations isn't coldness, it's confidence. Confidence that, whatever happens, you'll know how to handle it. Confidence that life, even with its detours, still knows the way. When you let go of the weight of how things should be, you begin to see the beauty of what is, and it is in that moment that suffering turns into wisdom and frustration into freedom. Number 4, develop leaders' emotional control. Imagine the weight of ruling an empire. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius received news that would make any ordinary person collapse. Wars, betrayals, illnesses, losses. Rarely did anyone come to bring him good news, and even then he had to keep his mind steady, his heart calm, and his gaze serene. While the world around him was in turmoil, they expected him to maintain balance. In Meditations, he wrote, "Be like a rock against which the waves break, and the sea around you is calm." This phrase shows what it means to be a true leader, someone who, even in the midst of a storm, does not become part of it. Stoicism does not teach us to eliminate emotions, but to govern them. Marcus Aurelius knew that fear, anger, or anxiety could not guide his decisions, for the price would be the fate of millions. What he felt was less important than what he needed to do. This is the difference between reacting and leading. Centuries later, General James Mattis, one of the greatest modern strategists, carried the book Meditations in all his missions. He said that a leader's greatest challenge is not a lack of information, but a lack of reflection. We live in a time when everyone reacts, but few truly think, and both leadership and wisdom are born from silence before action. A leader who loses emotional control can ruin everything, but one who observes before acting, breathes before responding, and thinks before punishing achieves something rare: respect, clarity, and moral authority. Think of a firefighter facing a blaze. While everything around him spirals out of control, he must maintain a cool head to save lives. A second of panic can cost everything. He feels fear like anyone else, but he has learned to act calmly even under pressure because he understands that uncontrolled fear increases the danger. This serenity amidst chaos is what defines a true leader, and the same principle applies to anyone, whether leading a team, a family, or their own life. Leadership is, above all, maintaining balance when the world loses its hold. Marcus Aurelius faced real storms and survived them all, not because the chaos ended, but because he learned to be as steady as a rock. This is the great lesson. True power lies not in commanding others, but in mastering oneself when everything around you crumbles. Number 5, anger burns you before it reaches the other person. Anger is one of the mind's oldest traps. It promises justice but brings destruction. It promises power but breeds weakness. It promises control but turns you into a prisoner. Think about the last time you got angry in traffic. The other driver didn't even notice, but you lost control, yelled and exhausted yourself, and in the end, you were the one who got hurt. Anger pretends to be strength, but the only body it destroys is your own. Marcus Aurelius said, "The consequences of anger are always worse than the cause that caused it." And he was right. Nothing born of anger ever returns whole. Thoughtless words, rash actions, decisions made in the heat of the moment, all of these leave scars that take time to heal. Seneca reminded us, "You wouldn't kick a mule because it's been kicked, nor bite a dog because it's been bitten." But that's what we do when we retaliate with anger. We respond instinct with instinct, pain with pain, losing the reason that makes us human. Anger is like a blindfold. It makes you believe you're winning, when in fact you're losing everything that matters: calm, clarity, and dignity. And the most dangerous thing is that anger isn't content with hurting others. It wants to make you forget who you are. The Stoics knew that nothing weakens a person as quickly as anger. It puts you at war with the world, and when the world falls silent, it leaves you fighting against yourself. In everyday life, the Stoic is the one who learns to choose silence when impulse wants to scream. It's the driver who waits patiently, the friend who doesn't respond in kind, the human being who understands that serenity is the highest form of strength. Because deep down, anger never punishes the other. It punishes the one who feels it first. And when the moment passes, you're the one left with the job of picking up the pieces. Emperor Hadrian, overcome with rage, once injured one of his servants in a thoughtless act. Filled with remorse, he offered all his possessions as an apology. But the wounded servant replied, "I want nothing, only my eye back." This is the fate of those who act in anger, realizing too late that some things cannot be fixed. In an argument, it is always better to leave the other side regretful than hurt. So the next time you feel the fire rising, remember, anger burns the one who carries it first. Take a deep breath, step back and think. Calmness may seem weak, but it is calm that wins every battle anger starts. Number 6. Humility as a path to peace. True peace is not born of victory, but of humility. It's when you stop needing to prove your worth that you begin to truly live it. Most people confuse humility with weakness, as if it were submission or a lack of confidence. But humility at its core is the opposite of this. It's the maturity of those who no longer need to defend themselves against everything because they know who they are. It's the silent strength of those who prefer understanding to victory. The ego is a master of disguise. It convinces you it's just protecting itself, when in reality it's fighting for approval. It makes you react to any criticism, argue over details, and feel threatened by differing opinions. The ego thrives on conflict because it constantly needs to reaffirm itself. And the bigger the ego, the less peace there is. Humility is the antidote. It breaks the cycle of vanity and restores clarity. When you don't need to win arguments, you begin to win yourself. Marcus Aurelius, even as Emperor of Rome, wrote every day to remind himself to remain simple. In Meditations, he said, "No man is better than another unless he is more virtuous." He knew that power without humility corrupts, and that wisdom without simplicity turns into arrogance. The Stoic does not see himself as above others. He simply seeks to be less of a slave to his own illusions. Humility, for him, is not a gesture. It is a philosophy of life. Being humble isn't about diminishing yourself. It's simply about stopping inflating your own importance. It's about recognizing that you don't know everything, that you can make mistakes, and that you have something to learn from anyone, even those you least like. It's about accepting that you will sometimes be misunderstood, wronged, forgotten, and that none of this needs to destroy your serenity. The humble person understands that the respect that truly matters isn't that which comes from others, but that which comes from their own clear conscience. Humility brings lightness because it dismantles internal defenses. You no longer carry the burden of always being right, of being admired, of being in control. And the fewer defenses, the more peace. Think about how pride complicates what could be simple. An apology delayed, a silence interpreted as an offense, a conversation that turns into an argument. All of this stems from the fear of appearing inferior. But humility dissolves this fear. It allows you to be human, imperfect, and yet at peace. Seneca said, "The man who thinks he is wise has already stopped learning." This phrase sums up the trap of arrogance. Those who believe they know everything close the doors to growth. The humble, on the other hand, remain learners. They listen more than they speak, observe more than they judge, ask more questions than they affirm. This openness is what keeps them moving, because those who think they are ready stagnate. And nothing that stops growing can keep the soul alive. Humility is also a form of freedom. When you stop depending on others' approval, you can finally act authentically. What others think is no longer a prison. Criticism doesn't destroy you. Praise doesn't intoxicate you. You remain firm, unchanged, because your foundation is something internal, not external. And this stability is what gives rise to true tranquility. Being humble also means understanding that the world doesn't revolve around you, that each person lives their own invisible battles, that there is no merit in humiliation, but greatness in understanding. The humble seek not to shine, but to illuminate. They don't compete, but cooperate. They don't take pride in power, but use it purposefully. And because of this, they achieve something the proud will never find: inner peace. Humility is the soil where all virtues grow. Without it, even knowledge becomes pride and courage becomes arrogance. But with it, everything flourishes naturally. Humility is like a river, the deeper, the quieter. It is the state of those who don't need to appear great because they already feel complete. Ultimately, humility isn't a moral gesture. It's a form of spiritual intelligence. It's realizing that no one gains anything by trying to be better than others, but much by becoming better than they were yesterday. It's living without the desire for recognition, and yet still being remembered for the serenity it conveys. Those who learn to bow before life, rather than trying to dominate it, discover an ancient secret. It is humility that leads to true peace. For the proud fight the world, the humble walk with it, and those who walk in harmony with life have already found what everyone seeks: rest for the soul. Number 7. The point where all problems begin. If you look closely, you'll notice that at the root of most of your pain, whether anxiety, fear, or anger, there's always the same mistake. Worry almost always follows the same script. Strong emotions that, in the end, solve nothing. They seem important, seem to show that you care, but they almost always do the opposite. They increase suffering, take away your clarity, and distance you from peace. Think about it. How many times has anger actually fixed what was bothering you? How many times has anxiety made something happen faster? How many times has fear prevented a loss? These emotions don't change the facts, they just make you suffer prematurely. Every time you lose control, let yourself be carried away by haste, irritation, or fear of what lies ahead, nothing really improves. The pain only grows. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "The causes of our emotions are often worse than what worries us." He knew that the true weight of life lies not in events, but in how we react to them. And that's precisely where the mind becomes its own trap. It creates storms in teacups. A simple comment becomes an insult. An unexpected event turns into a tragedy. Silence is taken as rejection. Without realizing it, you lose yourself in your own emotions, thinking you're fighting the world, when in fact you're fighting yourself. These emotional waves trick you into thinking you're reacting to life when you're actually moving away from it. They rob you of the presence, calm, and clarity of who you could be in each moment. The Stoics called this disturbance of the soul, the moment you surrender control of your life to the tides of impulse. The problem was never the world itself, but what you allowed it to awaken within you. But when you observe before reacting, breathe before responding, and quiet yourself before you lose yourself, something changes. The chaos outside remains the same, but within you a new order is born. True strength lies not in eliminating fear, but in not letting it control you. It lies not in stifling anger, but in transforming it into clarity. And it lies not in pretending anxiety doesn't exist, but in remembering that the now is the only place where life truly happens. It's not about feeling less, it's about not drowning in what you feel. It's from this lucidity that peace is born, because peace isn't a lack of emotion, it's emotional maturity. It's understanding that not everything needs an answer, that not all pain requires drama, and that silence is sometimes the greatest proof of wisdom. Remember this: life doesn't destroy you by what happens, but by the storms you create within yourself. When your mind returns to center, everything that seemed impossible becomes simple again. Number 8. Anger always makes everything worse. Behind many mistakes, fights, and regrets, there's almost always the same root: anger. It arrives disguised as courage, but deep down it's just a loss of control. It promises justice, but what it delivers is confusion, and when it passes, it almost always leaves the bitter taste of regret. The Stoics knew this. An ancient philosopher who was an advisor to a Roman emperor said, "Whenever you feel anger approaching, Caesar, say or do nothing until you have recited the entire alphabet." It was a reminder that the mind needs time to regain control, because anger is not strength, it is disorientation. Think about how many times impulse has made you say something you didn't mean, act without thinking, destroy in seconds something that took years to build. Anger is quick, but the damage it causes is profound. It leaves scars that take time to heal, and some never disappear. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like the one who offended you." In other words, don't respond in kind to the one who provokes you. True greatness lies in maintaining clarity when everything around you tries to pull you into chaos. Taking a breath before responding isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of power. Waiting a moment before acting may seem short, but it's in that brief interval that reason returns, and with it, dignity. Anger demands haste, but wisdom demands time, and every time you choose calm over impulse, you gain something no one can take away: self-mastery. Remember, anger never helps. It only makes you fight against the wind, tired and empty. But those who learn to breathe amidst provocation win without needing to hurt. Number 9. A tired mind confuses everything. There are days when nothing seems to make sense. Everything irritates, everything weighs on you, everything seems bigger than it really is. And yet, you insist on carrying on, thinking it's a lack of strength, when in reality, it's just a lack of rest. A tired mind doesn't think, it reacts. It doesn't see what's real, it distorts. The problem is that we live in a culture that glorifies tiredness, as if exhaustion were synonymous with merit. Working until you break has become a testament to your worth. But the price is high. You lose clarity, calm, and emotional control, the very things that sustain a balanced life. Fatigue has a subtle way of deceiving you. It convinces you that everything is wrong, when in reality you're the one who's exhausted. A simple setback becomes a tragedy. A comment becomes an insult. A small delay feels like a personal failure. An exhausted mind amplifies the negative and diminishes the positive. It puts you in a constant state of defense, where everything feels like a threat. And when this happens, no philosophy, strategy, or good intentions can solve it. The body demands a break, not arguments. Marcus Aurelius said that rest of the mind is the acceptance of things that do not depend on us. But many confuse rest with weakness, as if stopping means giving up, when in fact, it's the opposite. Those who don't know how to stop sooner or later are stopped by their own exhaustion. Rest is not a luxury, it's part of discipline. It's through rest that the mind reorganizes, the body recovers, and the eye regains clarity of vision. A warrior who doesn't sleep loses the precision of his sword. A thinker who doesn't pause loses the precision of his thought. How many arguments have arisen simply because you were too tired to listen? How many bad decisions have been made because your body demanded a break and your ego insisted on continuing? A worn-out mind creates problems where none exist, because fatigue fuels insecurity and diminishes tolerance. Patience fades, judgment becomes shallow, and any noise becomes a storm. What seemed simple yesterday seems unbearable today, and not because the world has gotten worse, but because you've lost yourself. The Stoics understood the importance of balance. Seneca said that the wise man lives in accordance with nature, and this includes respecting the limits of his own body. He compared the mind to a lamp. If it stays lit constantly, it burns out. Wisdom lies not in keeping it lit all the time, but in knowing when to turn it off and then light up again. There is no clarity in a saturated mind. You don't need to think better. You need to breathe better. Rest isn't just about sleeping. It's about disconnecting from the noise that drains you. It's about silencing screens, stepping away from pointless discussions, letting the world go on without you for a few hours. It's about walking without headphones, breathing the air slowly, staring aimlessly. It may seem small, but this empty space is where thoughts realign. Fatigue is like a fog. The more you try to run within it, the more you lose yourself. What dispels the fog isn't strength, it's pause. Over time, you realize that many of your crises weren't a lack of direction. They were simply a lack of rest. The problem wasn't in your life, it was in your mind, saturated with trying to solve everything without energy. After you rest, the same situations take on new meaning. What seemed like an end becomes a new beginning. What seemed like chaos becomes a lesson. Because rest restores perspective, and perspective restores wisdom. A calm mind is like a lake. It reflects clearly. A tired mind is like a rough sea. It distorts everything it touches. Knowing the difference between the two is what separates the wise from the impulsive. So when everything seems confusing, don't make decisions. Sleep. When the world seems hostile, don't react. Breathe. When you feel you've lost control, don't force it. Stop. Silence and rest are forms of intelligence. In the end, clarity doesn't come from strength. It comes from balance. You don't need to think more. You need to think better. And thinking better requires a serene body, a light mind, and a heart that isn't begging for a break. As Seneca said, nothing great can be created in constant agitation. Rest isn't the interruption of discipline, it's what makes it possible. Because a tired mind confuses everything, but a rested mind sees the essential. Number 10. You are solely responsible for how you feel. No one can make you angry, frustrated, or unbalanced unless you allow them to. This is one of the hardest truths of Stoicism, and also one of the most liberating. You are the master of your emotions. Epictetus said, "If you feel offended, know that you are contributing to the offense, because nothing disturbs us by itself. What disturbs us is what we think about what happened. The words and actions of others are neutral. It is how we interpret them that transforms them into pain." When someone angers you, what actually happens is not an offense, but a clash between two perspectives, the other person's and your own. Anger arises in this space between fact and judgment, and it is precisely there that your freedom lies, to choose between reacting or remaining at peace. Marcus Aurelius spoke about this often. He recalled an ancient phrase by Euripides, "Why should we rage against the world as if the world cared? The universe doesn't change because of your anger. It isn't altered by your shouting or criticism. The only thing that changes is your inner self, and almost always for the worse." The Stoics knew that hatred, resentment, and spite don't hurt others, they hurt your own character. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like the one who hurt you." This phrase sums up all the emotional maturity Stoicism teaches. It's not the insult that diminishes you, but how you react to it. Think about it. You can be offended and remain calm. You can be criticized and remain upright. You can be hurt and still maintain your dignity. An emotion only destroys you when it makes you act against who you are. Epictetus told the story of a man who was assaulted while bathing in the Roman baths. When the attacker came to apologize, the man replied, "I don't even remember being hit." This is the true power of self-control, choosing what deserves your reaction and what simply shouldn't take up space within you. Taking responsibility for your own emotions is an act of greatness. It's understanding that the world won't change to protect you, but that you can change how the world touches you. So the next time something angers you, ask yourself, do I really want to give my power over to this? Because those who master themselves are free, and those who are free don't need to conquer anyone but themselves. Number 11. Stop fighting the past. Nothing drains a person's strength more than trying to change what has already happened. The mind insists on going back, revisiting scenes, rewriting lines, correcting what was left behind, as if enough thought could alter what is already immutable. But the past is a door that only opens from within, and the more you force it, the more it closes. Suffering doesn't come from what happened, but from clinging to the idea that it could have been different. You don't suffer from the fact itself. You suffer from your resistance to accepting it. The human mind is stubborn. It seeks coherence, trying to find meaning even in the inexplicable. So it repeats the story 1,000 times, hoping to find a point that alleviates guilt or pain. But repetition doesn't bring healing. It brings imprisonment. You become hostage to memories, dragging them along like invisible chains. While the body lives in the present, the mind continues to live in yesterday. And so each new day is contaminated by what should have already been left behind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is nothing more than change, and change is the nature of life." He knew that resisting the past is the same as resisting nature itself. Everything changes. People, paths, feelings, destinies. That mistake that haunts you, that person who left, that moment that ended, all are part of the flow of time that never returns. And time doesn't owe you explanations. It simply moves on. What's up to you is not to understand everything, but to learn to let go. When you fight the past, the wound never heals. You keep touching the same spot, hoping the pain will disappear through persistence. But healing doesn't come from repetition. It comes from surrender. It's when you look back without trying to relive it. It's when you say to yourself, "That happened, it hurt, but it's over." This, "it's over," is liberating. It doesn't erase history, but it soothes the heart. It's the recognition that the past has served its purpose, and its purpose isn't to hold you back, it's to teach you. Seneca said, "What makes us suffer is not things, but our judgment of them." The same is true of the past. The fact is neutral. The weight comes from the meaning you continue to attribute to it. When you change your perspective, so does the effect it has on you. Guilt becomes learning. Loss becomes gratitude. Pain becomes strength. No past is useless if it gives rise to a new consciousness. What holds most people back is the habit of reliving history without updating the lesson. They repeat the plot, but never change their role in it. They speak of the mistake with the same voice, recall the disappointment with the same tone, as if they were doomed to feel it all over again. But they're not. The past is like a book. It's meant to be read, not inhabited. What binds you to it isn't the memory. It's the lack of resolve to close the chapter. Accepting the past isn't giving up. It's maturing. It's stopping seeing yourself as a victim and recognizing yourself as the author of your own trajectory. Even if you didn't choose what happened, you can still choose what to do with it now. The power is always in the present. It's where you can act, change, and start over. The past is the map of the path traveled. The present is the terrain on which the new is built. Looking back is like driving with your eyes in the rearview mirror. Inevitably, you'll crash. The Stoic doesn't try to erase what he's experienced. He integrates it. He understands that every loss, every mistake, and every goodbye prepared him for the awareness he has today. And so, instead of carrying the weight of pain, he carries the wisdom it left behind. When this understanding arrives, something within you aligns. Resentment gives way to peace. Anger gives way to clarity. And the past ceases to be a prison and becomes a silent teacher. Time doesn't heal everything, but it heals enough when you stop wounding your own. Leave the past where it belongs in its own time. Live in the present with the dignity of those who have learned, not with the fear of those who have lost. What has passed cannot return, but what comes can be much better if you let go of what remains. As Seneca said, life is divided into 3 times: what was, what is, and what will be. What is in our hands. What was and what will be are beyond our reach. So let go. Stop fighting what's already been overcome. You don't need to change the past to change yourself. Just stop carrying it. Because In the end, the past only controls you as long as you keep trying to control it. But there is a catch. If you've been trying for a long time to get out of conformity and ignorance and you can't do it in any way, maybe it's for other reasons that you don't know what's causing this, but I know what it is. It's anxiety. Anxiety comes like a silent snake and poisons you without you feeling it. This leaves you infected for days, months, and even years. And if you have that, it would be like living sick. However, there is an antidote from the Stoics, which together with modern psychology can free you from all this, just as it freed me. I made a video showing how you can get rid of this poison in your life. It's in the first comment. Click on the link in the first comment and cure yourself of this poison of anxiety. Number 12. Life takes a heavy toll on those who want to grow. You're not the first to face difficult times, nor the first to look around and feel like the world is falling apart. Before us, others have lived through corrupt governments, wars, injustices, and crises, and still kept going. The Stoics knew this. They lived under Nero, one of Rome's darkest periods, and yet they found peace within the chaos. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, they all understood what many people forget today. You can't control the world, but you can control what the world awakens within you. The problem isn't the noise outside, but how much of it you let in. You don't have to react to every news item or get angry at every injustice. Constant anger wears you down, pessimism paralyzes you, and information overload robs you of your calm. Life exacts a price for existing, and the Stoics called this paying the taxes of life. These are the costs of being alive, dealing with other people's mistakes, traffic delays, frustration, loss, waiting. Seneca said, "Pay life's taxes cheerfully, because fighting against everything that displeases you is like fighting the rain. You'll only get wet for nothing." Life won't apologize for where it put you, but it will always give you something to work with. And it's from that, from what you have now, that you should start building. Acceptance isn't giving up. It's realizing that there are things that simply don't depend on you. Epictetus called this the art of acquiescence, the wisdom of agreeing with what life brings without rebelling against the inevitable. When this understanding arrives, something inside you changes. The chaos continues to exist, but it no longer carries you with it. You learn to look without getting lost, to act without despair, and to live without so much resistance. Imagine an ancient city with potholed streets, noise, confusion, and unexpected events, yet still full of color, music, and charm. This is the world, imperfect, alive, and full of contrasts. Complaining about it is like complaining about the sea for having waves. Life has a price. There are frustrations, injustices, and pain, but also lessons, beauty, and gratitude. The Stoic secret is this: pay the taxes of life calmly, because what you accept frees you, and what you resist imprisons you. In the end, life is like this city, awkward but full of grace. Not everything will be fair, not everything will be simple, but everything can be a chance to grow. You don't need a perfect story, you need determination. You don't need ideal conditions, you need clarity to act within what you have. Those who accept their own reality regain the power to change it. Accept what you cannot change, transform what you can, and move forward with courage. Complaining doesn't change the world, but accepting it with wisdom changes you. Acceptance isn't surrender, it's strength well used. It's when you stop wasting energy pushing walls and start building doors. It's when you understand that the world doesn't exist to adapt to you, but to shape you, teach you, and strengthen you. The Stoics never talked about giving up. They talked about acting based on what's real, not what we wish it were. That's why they were unwavering. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They did what was necessary with what they had, where they were. Maturity comes when you understand that life owes you nothing. It simply offers you a battlefield, and how you fight is what defines you. Some choose rebellion and exhaustion. Others choose acceptance and growth. Acceptance is looking at chaos and saying, "Even so, I carry on." It's holding firm even when everything seems uncertain. It's understanding that reality is not the enemy. It's the terrain on which you test your strength. So when life challenges you, don't ask, "Why me?" but "What can I learn from this?" and "What is still within my control?" This simple exchange of questions transforms weakness into power. True peace isn't born when everything improves, but when you decide not to get lost in the midst of what happens. Repeat to yourself, "I accept what is and move in peace." Say it until this phrase becomes a way of life, because when you act with awareness and not with anger, life stops being an adversary and becomes an ally. Freedom isn't in controlling the wind, but in learning to adjust your sails, even in a storm. And when you understand this, you realize that nothing can truly stop you, because whoever accepts what is gains the power to change what will be. Number 13. The weight of wanting to control the uncontrollable. Much of your anxiety comes not from what's happening, but from the desperate effort of trying to hold on to something that was never in your hands. You try to control people, opinions, outcomes, the past, the future, and the tighter you tighten your grip, the more life slips through your fingers. It's like fighting the wind. You get tired, you get irritated, and in the end, the wind keeps blowing. Total control is a comfortable mirage. You walk toward it, and it keeps receding. Meanwhile, what's truly under your control, your attention, your choices, your presence, gets forgotten by the side of the road. Epictetus divided reality into two simple parts: what depends on you and what doesn't. This is the boundary between peace and torment. When we insist on crossing over to the uncontrollable, we pay the price with anxiety. You don't control whether they'll like you, but you do control your honesty. You don't control whether the opportunity will come, but you do control your preparation. You don't control whether it will rain, but you do control whether you'll wear a raincoat. It seems obvious until the first unexpected event of the day. The mind, trained to demand guarantees, goes to war against the facts. That couldn't have happened. It could have. Reality doesn't ask permission to exist. The desire for control often disguises itself as responsibility. You believe you're preventing problems, but in practice you're trying to edit your life. You replay conversations in your head to fix what's already been said, monitor others' moods to avoid conflict, and monitor every detail so nothing goes wrong. But the cost is high. You live tense, hyper-alert, unable to relax, and the more you try to tame the world, the more untamable it becomes. The result is predictable: more control, more frustration, more exhaustion. At the end of the day, besides being tired, you feel distant from yourself. The solution isn't to become cynical, it's to become clear-headed. Acceptance isn't passivity, it's applied emotional intelligence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Adjust to what is given to you. Not to stand idly by, but to stop fighting with what is. When you let go of what doesn't depend on you, you don't lose power, you regain it. You regain focus, serenity, and accuracy." An archer doesn't control the wind, but he controls his posture, his breathing, and the bow. If he wastes energy cursing the wind, he misses. If he adjusts his body and takes aim again, he hits despite it. Train your clarity in the little things. When something irritates you, observe what's really happening before reacting. Notice the urge to correct the uncontrollable and instead return to what can be done now. Breathe, accept, act on what's within your control, and let go of the rest. This simple practice, repeated often, begins to change your brain. Your body relaxes, your breathing slows, and clarity returns. Gradually, you understand that calm isn't the result of control, but of trust. There's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop asking the world to be different so you can be okay. It's the peace of those who exchange demands for preparation, rigidity for flexibility, complaint for decision. Life will continue to bring waves, some gentle, some violent. Your job isn't to order the sea, it's to learn to adjust the sails. Let go of what isn't yours, perfect what is, and repeat to yourself until it becomes natural: I take care of what I do. Life takes care of its own. In this silent agreement, the weight lifts from your shoulders, your mind aligns, and your strength returns to the right hands, yours. Number 14. silence as a form of power. In a world that talks constantly, silence has become a rare and profound form of power. Everyone wants to have the last word, respond quickly, prove a point, show they know what they're talking about. But those who live reacting to the world's noise lose their voice. Silence isn't the absence of a response. It's mastery over impulse. It's the conscious decision not to waste energy on what doesn't deserve your presence. And precisely for this reason, it intimidates. Because the silence of those who think is worth more than the noise of those who merely react. We live surrounded by emotional urgency. Everything demands an immediate reaction, a message, a provocation, a comment. The modern mind is trained to respond, not to understand. But every time you respond without thinking, you move away from your own center. You speak when you should observe, explain when you should remain silent, and try to convince those who never wanted to understand. The result is predictable: fatigue, resentment, and the constant feeling of defending yourself. But silence breaks this cycle. It interrupts the spiral of noise and returns control of the situation to those who speak least. The Stoics already knew this. Epictetus said that a wise man speaks only when he has something worth more than silence. Marcus Aurelius wrote his thoughts not to convince others, but to discipline himself. They understood that true power lies not in winning arguments, but in mastering one's own temperament. Silence is the pause where reason breathes again. It is the interval in which the mind aligns itself before speaking. Those who rush to respond almost always regret it. Those who learn to wait find clarity. Silence is also a test of inner security. Insecure people can't stand the gap between one sentence and the next. They need to fill the space with justifications, opinions, defenses. Those who trust themselves don't fear silence, because they know the value isn't in convincing, but in understanding. When you learn not to react immediately, you discover something precious. Most battles dissolve on their own when they encounter no resistance. What the other person was expecting was your loss of control, not your calm. And nothing disarms more than an answer that never comes. Silence isn't passivity, it's strategy. It's observing before acting, understanding before judging, waiting before reacting. It's having enough power to choose the right moment to speak, and when you do speak, to make each word carry weight. Silence filters out the unnecessary and preserves your energy for what truly matters. It transforms communication into an art. Less noise, more precision. In a time when everyone shouts, silence becomes authority. There's a quiet power in those who speak little. Silence arouses curiosity, respect, and even fear. It creates a field of presence. People pay attention not because you demand it, but because you don't waste it. It's the power of those who know themselves. They don't need to prove themselves. And when they decide to express themselves, their words strike the air with the gravity of someone who thinks before speaking. The voice of those who live in silence rings louder because it's charged with intention, not haste. Practice silence in small situations, when someone provokes you, when a mistake happens, when the urge to justify arises. Breathe before responding. Observe the effect of calm. It changes the atmosphere around you. Sometimes what the moment needs isn't another sentence, but a space for the truth to emerge on its own. Silence does this. It reveals what the noise hides. Gradually, you realize that silence isn't empty. It's guidance. It teaches you to listen better, think better, and decide more accurately. Wisdom grows in that gap between what happens and what you choose to say. And it's precisely there, in that space between impulse and choice, that inner power resides. Silence is not for the weak. It requires emotional strength, ego control, and confidence in one's own presence. But when you conquer it, nothing external can destabilize you. Because while others try to win through volume, you win through clarity. And clarity, unlike a loud voice, never needs to shout to be heard. Number 15, the courage to remain calm. Most people believe that courage is acting with strength, raising your voice, facing what scares you. But there is a much more difficult kind of courage, that of remaining calm when everything inside you wants to react. Calmness is not the absence of emotion, it is mastery over it. It is the art of maintaining a firm center while the world tries to pull you out of yourself. Being calm is refusing the invitation of chaos, and that requires a strength not everyone possesses. We live in an age where impulse is celebrated and patience is seen as weakness. People pride themselves on speaking their minds, even without thinking about what they say. They confuse speed with effectiveness, reaction with power. But true power is the opposite. It resides in the gap between what happens and what you decide to do. It is in this space that the wise mind is built, observing, breathing, and choosing. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like the one who hurt you." And this is only possible when calmness is stronger than impulse. Being calm isn't about being indifferent. It's about being fully present without being swept away. It's about facing provocation and choosing lucidity. It's about facing fear and deciding to continue, even while trembling. It's about listening to criticism and responding with clarity, not anger. Calmness is the most mature form of courage because it requires control rather than instinct. Those who react in the heat of the moment yield to their surroundings. Those who breathe and respond with purpose dominate their surroundings. Think of the great leaders, philosophers, generals, or even the wise men of history. They all shared this seemingly supernatural serenity. Not because they didn't feel fear or anger, but because they learned not to let these forces decide for them. General Fabius Maximus, during the Second Punic War, became known as the Timer. While Rome wanted haste and revenge, he chose to wait for the right moment to act. He was called a coward until he won. Calmness, when guided by reason, is a winning strategy. A calm mind sees what an agitated mind distorts. When you're panicking, any obstacle seems insurmountable. When you take a deep breath, everything falls into place. Calm doesn't erase the problem, it simply restores the clarity to solve it. This is why the Stoics practiced silence and reflection. They knew that the first enemy to be defeated was not the world, but one's own inner imbalance. "No man is free," said Epictetus, "unless he masters himself." And this mastery isn't born from a magic formula, but from constant practice. It begins with the small irritations of the day, the traffic, the delay, the criticism, the message that didn't arrive. In each situation, you have a choice. React as always, or act differently. The training is there. Staying calm when everything is fine is not a virtue. True strength appears when chaos knocks on the door and you continue to breathe deeply. Calmness is not an escape. It's an affirmation. It's the silent certainty that your balance is worth more than approval, pride, or haste. It's looking into the storm and saying, "You won't take me with you." And when you practice this repeatedly, the world may scream, but within you begins to emerge a place of stillness that nothing can shake. This is the courage few seek, but everyone admires. Over time, you realize that situations don't need to change for you to change. Traffic continues, people continue, the world continues, but you become different. Your energy stops being wasted on pointless arguments and starts being invested in building. Because calm isn't the end of action, it's the beginning of conscious action. True courage lies not in confronting others, but in confronting yourself. It lies in not letting fear dictate your decisions, nor anger guide your voice. It lies in keeping your mind steady when your body wants to run and your ego wants to react. Being calm is, at its core, an act of faith. Faith that you don't have to shout your way to victory. Faith that time will bring clarity. Faith that nothing that is yours will be lost by waiting. And it is in this quiet faith that true power resides. Because he who remains calm while the world falls apart is not weak, he is free. Number 16. Turn pain into direction. Everyone carries pain they didn't choose. Losses, rejections, failures, silences left unanswered. There are wounds that time doesn't erase. It only teaches us to look at them differently. And yet many spend their lives trying to escape them, as if ignoring them would heal. But ignored pain doesn't disappear. It turns into a burden. Denied pain turns to bitterness, and bitterness little by little steals the shine from our eyes. What heals isn't escaping suffering, it's giving it meaning. The Stoics never promised a life without pain. They knew that would be the same as asking for a life without humanity. For Marcus Aurelius, suffering was part of nature, the fire that purifies character. The obstacle to the path becomes the path, he said, and that's exactly it. What seems to be blocking you today may be the very ground where your growth begins. When you stop asking yourself, why did this happen to me? And starts asking, what can this turn me into? Pain changes roles. It stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher. Transforming pain into direction is the most courageous act there is, because it requires looking head-on at what hurts, without dramatizing or denying it. It requires you to extract meaning from chaos, to see purpose where only apparent loss exists. It's easy to grow when everything is going well. The challenge is to grow when everything falls apart. But it's there, in the midst of collapse, that true self-mastery is born. It's on the ground that you discover what sustains you. Seneca wrote that, "No man is more unhappy than he who has never faced adversity, because he has never been allowed to know himself." Pain has this secret function, to reveal who you are when all that is superfluous is stripped away. When pride, control, and appearance fall away, what remains is the essential. It is at this point that consciousness expands. Suffering, when used well, clears the vision. It separates what is important from what is mere noise. But transforming pain into direction isn't romanticizing suffering, it's maturing it. It's recognizing that what hurt you can also shape you. The fire that burns is the same that hardens steel. Pain is the point at which the soul is tested, and how you respond to it defines the kind of person you will become. Some become bitter, others wiser. Some stop trusting, others learn to trust with discernment. Pain is inevitable, but where you give it to is a choice. The modern mind has learned to numb everything, pain, boredom, loneliness, with distraction. But what you avoid feeling returns in another form, as anxiety, stress, irritation, emptiness. Running away from pain is like trying to escape your own shadow. Impossible. Facing it is the only way through it. When you sit with pain without judgment, it begins to dissolve. Not because it disappears, but because it changes form. It ceases to be an open wound and becomes a silent force. The Stoics saw this as alchemy of the soul, transforming suffering into wisdom. Epictetus, who was born a slave and lived under humiliation, said that nothing external has power over a man who decides to use everything as material for inner growth. He didn't romanticize suffering, but rather embraced it. If life gave him stones, he built. If it took away his ground, he learned to walk on ruins. It is this mentality that separates the resilient from the broken. Pain, when embraced, teaches you what nothing else can. Patience, compassion, presence. It shows you the limits of control and invites you to humility. And if you allow it, it opens doors that comfort never could. Because it's when life bends you that you learn to bend without breaking. Transforming pain into direction is, at its core, an act of faith, not blind faith, but the clear-headed trust that nothing is in vain. It's looking at suffering and saying, I can make something good out of this too. It's continuing even when there are no guarantees. It's believing that every failure contains a seed of wisdom waiting to be born. Pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal you. And when you begin to see suffering as a teacher, not a punishment, you discover something extraordinary. Life wasn't against you. It was shaping you. Because in the end, it's not the absence of pain that brings peace, but the conscious transformation of it into purpose. And those who learn to do this never see suffering the same way again. They understand that what was once a wound now points the way. And that pain, when accepted with courage, always becomes a direction. Number 17. Learn to understand your emotions. Emotions are not the enemy. The problem isn't feeling too much, but not knowing what to do with what you feel. Stoicism never taught us to eliminate emotions. It taught us to guide them. The wise man is not the one who feels nothing, but the one who feels everything without letting it get the better of him. Most people try to hide their anger, disguise their fear, hide their sadness. But repressing it is like trying to put out a fire with more fire. The more you fight it, the more you burn. The Stoic does the opposite. He observes, he feels, but from a higher place within himself. He looks within and says, "I'm angry. Why? Where does this come from? What can I learn from this?" This is the difference between being driven by emotions and guiding them. The emotion remains there, alive, but now the mind is in control. You don't run from what you feel, you transform it. Anger can become energy for action. Fear can transform into attention and prudence. Sadness can become reflection and empathy. And joy, when balanced, transforms into gratitude. The Stoics understood that the key is not to suppress emotions, but to redirect them wisely. Epictetus said that the wise man transforms everything that happens into material for his own growth. Even the chaos within him can become strength if clearly understood. Think of an athlete during a competition. If he loses control, he's defeated before the game is over. But if he feels anger and uses it as focus, as discipline and controlled energy, this emotion transforms into power. As Coach Phil Jackson said, "Use your emotion, but never let it use you." Mark Twain wrote, "My life has been full of terrible disasters, most of which never happened." And that's exactly it. The mind creates more suffering than life itself. But when you learn to look at your emotions without drowning in them, you discover something powerful. Emotion is a tool, not an enemy. Knowing how to use it wisely is what turns impulse into clarity, pain into learning, and reactivity into strength. This is how the Stoic lives, not without emotion, but with emotion under control. Number 18, the danger of haste. We live in a time when everything seems urgent. People eat in a hurry, speak in a hurry, think in a hurry, and before they know it, they're also living in a hurry. Haste has become a symbol of productivity, but in reality, it's just another name for anxiety. It's the illusion of moving forward, when in reality, one is simply wearing oneself out. The accelerated mind mistakes movement for progress and ends up running in circles. In the end, haste takes its toll. It robs clarity, destroys presence, and consumes the soul. Marcus Aurelius said that, "A man in a hurry does not live. He merely passes through life like a distracted spectator." And that's exactly what haste does. It transforms living into survival. When everything needs to be immediate, the present ceases to exist. The person projects themselves onto what comes next, the next result, the next goal, the next victory, and forgets that the only life possible is the one happening now. Haste is the habit of escaping the present moment, believing there's something better later. But later never arrives. Haste is dangerous because it appears to be efficient, but it's merely restlessness in disguise. It stems from fear of wasting time, of falling behind, of not being enough. But it's precisely in rushing that we lose what truly matters. Stoic wisdom teaches the opposite. Doing everything calmly doesn't mean doing it slowly, it means doing it consciously. One gesture made with attention is worth more than 100 actions done automatically. Haste robs you of depth, calmness restores precision. Epictetus said that man should act like an archer. He doesn't shoot while running. He prepares his body, breathes, waits for the right moment, takes aim, and then releases the arrow. Haste, on the other hand, shoots without aiming, wastes energy, and misses the target. This is why so many live exhausted lives. They are always doing so much, but with little purpose. The wise man doesn't run, he advances, because he understands that haste accelerates the body, but slows the mind. Nature is the best reminder of this. No tree grows in a day. No river forms in an instant. Everything solid needs time. But impatient humans try to force the pace of their own evolution and end up breaking. It's like opening a cocoon prematurely. The butterfly emerges, but without wings strong enough to fly. There's a right time for everything, and forcing the process is the same as sabotaging the outcome. Haste also destroys relationships. You want the other person to change quickly, for forgiveness to come quickly, for the answer to arrive now. But emotional maturity requires patience, the ability to give time to time. Love, friendship, trust, and even success need room to grow. Nothing flourishes under pressure. Haste tries to control what should simply be cultivated. A hurried mind is the enemy of presence. It doesn't observe, it only reacts. It doesn't savor, it only consumes. And that's why it lives tense, anxious, and impatient. When everything becomes a race, even victory loses its flavor. The Stoic understands that true productivity isn't doing more, but doing what's necessary with purpose and serenity, doing less, but with soul. Calm isn't slowness, it's mastery. Practicing calm is an act of courage in a world that glorifies haste. It's choosing to act with precision when everyone else is rushing in despair. It's understanding that nothing truly important can be rushed, not maturity, not love, not success. What is rushed breaks. What is built with patience endures. So the next time you feel the urge to run, take a breath and ask yourself, do I want to get there quickly or do I want to get there in one piece? Because haste may get you further, but calm is what keeps you there. As Seneca said, make haste slowly. It is in this paradox that wisdom lies, walking steadily, not in haste. In the end, time is not the enemy. The enemy is impatience. Life is not conquered by rushing, it is conquered by understanding its rhythm. And when you learn to move with time, not against it, you discover something rare. Haste has never been synonymous with progress, and calm has never been synonymous with delay, because what moves slowly with purpose always arrives first. Number 19. Gratitude, the antidote to chaos. The human mind has a dangerous tendency to focus on what's missing and forget what remains. This is why, even when surrounded by good things, humans live at war with themselves. External chaos is rarely the problem. True chaos arises within, when dissatisfaction replaces gratitude. Gratitude is not just a beautiful feeling, it is a form of lucidity. It is the act of seeing clearly all that remains solid amidst the storm. And precisely for this reason, it is the most powerful antidote to despair. Most people live as if what they have is guaranteed until it's gone. Only then do they realize that the simple things were extraordinary. The seemingly ordinary health, the people around them, the roof over their heads, the food, the time. Gratitude is the art of perceiving beauty before life teaches you its absence. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning to remind himself to be grateful for the simple fact of being alive. He knew that by starting the day recognizing what you have, your mind protects itself against the dissatisfaction the world insists on offering. Gratitude shifts your focus. Instead of focusing on what's missing, you begin to see what's already enough. This isn't conformity, it's balance. The nonconformist lives trapped in the idea that they always need more to be happy. The grateful understand that happiness grows when they learn to value the present. Chaos begins when the mind believes that everything you have is little, and everything missing is essential. But peace arises when you realize the opposite. What you have is more than enough, and what's missing is just a detail. Seneca said that nothing is nobler than a grateful mind. He understood that gratitude is the highest form of spiritual intelligence because it transforms any circumstance into a source of learning. Faced with loss, the ungrateful ask, "Why me?" The grateful ask, "What can this still teach me?" Faced with pain, the ungrateful rebel, the grateful mature. Faced with chaos, the ungrateful resist, the grateful observe and act with serenity. Gratitude does not deny suffering, it transforms it into meaning. A mind without gratitude is always at war. It complains, demands, compares, criticizes, and without realizing it, it becomes a prisoner of its own scarcity. Nothing is enough, nothing satisfies. It constantly chases after something that, even when it's achieved, has lost its flavor. Gratitude breaks this cycle because it teaches the gaze to rest in the present. When you begin to be grateful for the little things, the cold water, the functioning body, the morning that begins, your heart calms. What once seemed insufficient reveals itself to be abundant. But gratitude isn't a fleeting emotion, it's a daily practice. It's an exercise in mindfulness. It's stopping for a few minutes and recognizing that despite everything, there are still more blessings than tragedies, more reasons to be thankful than to complain. The brain gets used to what it has, so it's important to remind yourself. Writing down 3 good things a day, no matter how small, can shift the axis of your mind. What was chaos becomes perspective. What was a burden becomes learning. The Stoics saw gratitude as part of the discipline of the mind. Not because life was easy, but precisely because they knew it never would be. They understood that the grateful man is invincible. He can lose everything except his sense of meaning. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by wars and betrayals, still found time to give thanks for his faithful friends, for the books that instructed him, for his very breath. He knew that gratitude doesn't change the facts, but it changes who you are before them. Gratitude is the point where chaos loses its power. Because those who are grateful don't let themselves be dominated by lack. A grateful person still feels pain, but they don't drown in it. They understand that life is imperfect, and yet it's a privilege to be able to live it. Gratitude doesn't erase problems, but it prevents them from blinding you to what still works. Ultimately, gratitude is a form of wisdom. It's looking at life and saying, I don't have everything I want, but I have everything I need to move forward. It's recognizing that even the falls contributed to who you became, that what left made room for what arrived, that the simple fact of still being here is reason enough to be grateful. Chaos will always exist, but those who live in gratitude carry within themselves a center of serenity that the world cannot shake. Gratitude is not only the antidote to chaos, it is the constant reminder that, despite everything, life is still a gift.